Buenos dias, Brian, and thank you for joining us today at Business Spotlight Series. Today, I am excited to introduce Brian Wright, Managing Director of FBD Consultancy. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you very much, Javier. I appreciate it. Thanks for inviting me on your program.
It's our pleasure. Now, Brian, the first question I always ask is, do you want to be an accountant since you were a child at school? Or when do you first start thinking of becoming what you are today?
I didn't know what an accountant was when I was at school. So we all have our careers advice, or let's say careers non-advice or bad advice. And my career meeting was very simple. The lady said to me, "Do you like maths?" Yep. "Do you like languages?" Yep. "Do you like sciences?" Yep. "Do you like business studies?" Yep. "Has nobody ever said to you it'd be good to do some job?" And I said, "Oh, well, my mum thought it might be quite good to be an accountant." And there the decision was struck. She said, "Oh, that's a good idea. You go be an accountant." Amusing, isn't it?
Very much so. And here we are today. But okay, you had that thought. So when did you actually become an accountant? What was the time lag between you thinking that and you doing it?
So I had at school studied accounts, which I did to hire. And then from there, you go on to university and you do an accounting degree. In my case, I did a general business degree. Actually, I switched halfway through my general business degree to do an accounting orientated degree. And then I qualified with an honours degree in accounts and business law. And from there, you then have to do professional exams. So I guess the decision to do accounts was mid-university, although in all honesty, it's not possible for any human being to know what accounts is all about unless they happen to grow up in a family where one or more parents are accountants.
Interesting.
Because it's not at all what people think. It's not just sitting in front of computers. There's a lot more to it than that. There's a whole,
So
the whole
tell us a bit more
human.
about that. So what is accountancy about?
Oh, that's a very difficult one to answer. I think the first port of call would be to define the different strands of what people see as the finance for their business,
Mm.
mostly misunderstood. So first of all, you have bookkeeping, and that is meticulous keeping of records. Nowadays, it's meticulous keeping of records using a computer, usually an online system. The second area is accounts, where it is determining which costs and which income fit into a particular period. So the bookkeeping's done, you still have to make professional judgment about monies that have not been spent but have to be spent, monies that have not been received for which the work's already been completed. So you're playing with effectively the year end at both ends of the year. That's what accounts is about. Plus, you have some professional judgment about strange things like depreciation and other jargon that you get within accounts. And that's accounts. The next part
Depreciation and
is
amortization. Just to confuse
amortization.
things a bit even more.
Yes, amortization. So there are all these strange concepts which you have to learn and understand, but it's all about fitting the correct cost, the correct income in the correct financial period. The next step on from that is, I suppose, tax. It's actually a separate discipline. And within tax, there are things that are not allowed, which are allowed in accounts, and things which are allowed that are not allowed in accounts. So the tax about how much tax you pay, and tax is also a wide area, PAYE, national insurance, VAT, corporation tax, etc. It's a completely different discipline. And the final part of this finance function, if it's a bigger business, is the audit function. And it's another area of finance. So from an accounting point, we don't do audit, but we do all of the rest. So we do elements of all of those things to try to support our various businesses. For us, the number crunching, to use a very crude term, it's a very technical, a very important issue. But for us, the bigger issue is what do the numbers mean? because most business people do not fail because of the amount of tax they've got to pay. They fail because they don't know what their business is telling them. They don't know what the numbers are. They can't
Correct.
interpret what they're telling them. And that for us is the single most important factor of accounting.
Definitely. And that's why I love the mantra, numbers is the language of business. If
Mm.
you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business. And as you said,
Correct.
numbers tell a story, but you need to know the numbers first. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
Absolutely.
So you said auditing, bookkeeping, taxation. And then when I think of an accountant, what I think is how can this accountant help me save money? Okay, that's one question that most business owners, if not all, think about. So in my head, an accountant is not a transactional thing that they do the financial accounts, end of year, they meet once a year, here are the numbers. Many business owners don't look at the numbers. So what do you have to say about, when one is choosing an accountant, what are the things to think about?
Okay, so we have uh, regular conversations with clients or prospective clients who would approach us, and they say, some of them just say, how much is it for a set of accounts? And I will not answer that question because it's a meaningless question. If you want a cheap compliance service where somebody at the end of the year counts up your numbers and then tells you how much tax to pay, that for me, bluntly, is a service, but I'm not entertaining that. I don't think it's helpful. It is a service, and I would say probably 95% of accountants provide that kind of service. That's great if you're a startup and everything's got to be absolute minimal cost because things are tight. Okay. But for me, how can my accountant save me money is a fantastic question because there are costs which you can reduce, but there are also costs which you do not have to incur if you speak to the right people. There is income that you get, but there's also income that you might have got if you spoke to the correct person. So for me, an accountant not only helps an individual to count the income they receive, to minimize the costs where they can. For example, can you get the same insurance service for less money if you shop around? If you go and watch Martin Lewis's news program, can you take advantage of some of his recommendations? That's one. But what's never thought of by small businesses is ideas for the business that they could pursue with a view to generating additional income that they would not otherwise have had. You cannot quantify that when you go and speak to an accountant. You have to take a view, is this accountant going to open my eyes to bigger opportunities? That's one side. On the other side, my view is that most small and new businesses pay for their naivety and their ignorance.
Mm.
I did. Everybody will. Even with a good accountant or a good lawyer or a
At the
good
beginning.
professional, they will because they don't know what they don't know.
Correct.
However, a good accountant might say, don't get involved with this person because I am aware that this person has a habit of taking advantage of small businesses. Or a good accountant might say, go and get 3 quotes at the simplest. So how can an accountant save you money to focus on that? One, they can encourage you to look around the market and get the same quality of service for a lesser fee. It's not always about cheap. Sometimes you buy cheap, you buy twice. You've heard that before. But it's about getting the adequate quality of service for the minimum possible cost, or avoiding doing certain things that will stop you paying money out that right now you don't need to. And again, that's the unquantifiable figure. I think good accountants, good professionals will save newbies a fortune if they will pick up the phone and have that conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I love looking at the numbers, and I love percentages and ratios because they tell you a lot. Because numbers on their own, what does 10,000 mean? Give me a context. So
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah, it's so you've got the financial account, then you have management accounts,
Yes.
which tell you the story. It's a more of a living document, really.
Yes, and these management accounts are valuable to the extent to which you can compare one quarter or 1 month with another, 1 month with the same month of the previous year.
Yes.
So the more years and more months you operate, and the
Yeah.
more you look at the numbers, the more they tell a story.
Yeah. What advice would you give to business owners who are watching this? And how often should they look at their numbers? I've got
Well,
my own idea, but I want to ask you.
uh, the bigger the business, the more often you have to look at your numbers. However, there are two types of number to look at. One is cash flow, bank account, and the other is profitability, and they are not the same. If you've no cash at that particular point in time, you're in trouble. However, if you're not making profit, then in 12 months, you will be in trouble. Okay, so there is a difference between the two. And as I say, the bigger the business, the more often they are going to have to look at the numbers. I would say any businessman or worth his salt will look at all of the numbers at least once a month.
Mm.
Some of the bigger businesses we work with look at their cash flow weekly and sometimes even daily.
Yeah. I personally go for weekly numbers. I love weekly dashboards or scorecards, and tracking numbers. Excellent. Going to software, you've got in the old days, most people were on Sage. Then Xero and QuickBooks really got onto the market for the SME, the small and medium-sized businesses. What's your take on accounting packages?
I think they are getting better. The caveat for me is they don't do what the adverts on the television say they do. There is still work to be done. If you're not good with these packages, you probably still need a bookkeeper as well as an accountant potentially. You need somebody to put information in. But they have come a long way. They integrate with a lot of third-party suppliers like energy, insurance. They integrate with the banks. They have the facility now to take a photograph of paperwork, and that means that you don't have to type the detail in from scratch. There are shortfalls. Sometimes you take a photograph, it puts it to the wrong place. Sometimes it puts it to the right place, but lacks the necessary detail
So you still need
for
to
the
check.
accountant to identify it. But I think the modern softwares are generally very, very good, and they do save time in the amount of keying in of information compared to the old days, but they are not complete. And a small business owner should expect to have to complete
Yes.
the paperwork or the online
Yes.
entries, even with the software, or to have to buy in external bookkeeping services
Yes.
to.
Does the government or the HMRC have access to this online software, the Xerox, QuickBooks? Do they have access to people's numbers?
Not directly, at least at the moment, but under the law, they can request information from anybody, anywhere, at any time. That's banks, that's software houses, anybody who operates within the United Kingdom would be subject. So if the government can demonstrate that there is a statutory requirement or suspected fraud or something like that, then all of us
Yeah.
required to. But the only exception is lawyers who have this strange thing called client privilege. Accountants don't. And the reason they don't is because there are too many unqualified accountants operating in the marketplace who are not signed up to any rules. But
Okay.
generally
Let,
speaking, we all have to provide that.
us go there. We had this conversation last time we spoke. How, when a startup, when a small business, or even a business who wants to change accountants, medium-sized, what advice would you give for a business owner or a financial director that want to change accountant? What criteria, in order not to sign up a cowboy accountancy firm?
Yeah.
How can you help these people to make the right decision? What are the questions to ask, the things to check?
My suggestion is, well, first of all, most business people don't pay enough attention to their gut. They don't use the intuition that they were born with. If you have any uncomfortable feeling about the people that you're talking to, it should be an automatic no. That's the starting point.
So gut feeling is one thing,
One
one
thing.
element.
The second area you might want to look at is whether that accountant has the type of experience for that industry or for that niche. Many small businesses don't really have that kind of problem, but some do. So, for example, if it's a small medical practice, you obviously want to know, does the accountant understand the nuances of what happens in the medical industry? And there are a huge number. Property is another area where there are specifics to do with the industry. Pharmaceuticals, again, new. Engineering, again. So you would probably want to go and speak to an accountant who generally had experience in the industry that you're operating within. Beyond that, I would suggest one of the best things you can do is have a think about some of the complexities that you've experienced within your business already. Go onto the internet, do some research. Remember, for every hour you spend planning, you'll save yourself 7 hours of grief down the road. So you want to go on and do all the homework you can about the particular specialisms within your area and get an idea of the sort of response or answer you're expecting from an accountant, and then go sit in front of the accountant and ask the question. And you will soon find out whether they know what they're talking about or whether they're just blowing steam.
Yeah, interesting. And now I guess with AI, I have to be honest. I ask my accountant a few questions because first of all, my first port of call is AI, is ChatGPT or whichever you are using,
Yes.
and I get the answer there, and I just move on. Which helps accountants as well because an educated client is a great client. In
Yeah,
my
no, I agree because we actually like clients who pick the phone up and ask us questions because one, we should know the answer. Of two, we need to go and find out fast so that we can help that client. So I would wholeheartedly agree. The one caveat with AI is that it quite often gives you the wrong answer. So you just need to be careful. AI is a robot, it's a machine, and sometimes it picks up the wrong end of the stick. There are actually a bunch of court cases of people who used AI to do accounts and tax returns, and the HMRC is now having fun with these people. It
Yes,
also tends to be, at the
yes,
moment at least, and it will pick up, it tends to be a couple of years out of date
yes.
as well.
Yes, I've when I use AI and I ask questions, sometimes you get the wrong answer because you ask the wrong question, or you
Correct.
haven't given enough context,
Mm.
data points. But then you need to know a little bit about what you are asking because if you know nothing, then you cannot evaluate the quality of the answer.
Yes.
It's I use it to do things faster more than or things which are factual
Yes.
rather than
In actual fact, most of these new softwares that we were talking about earlier on are embedded with a huge amount of AI now.
yes, yes. What would you say for cash flow forecast? Okay. Um, I'm thinking, a business owner has most people have a spreadsheet with weekly columns, and then is there a way to that it's not time consuming to get your cash flow forecast? Because obviously the Xeros and QuickBooks, they all now claim to have, an element of cash flow forecast based on your historical data. I know,
Yes.
and yeah,
I think to a point they can work. We have never invested in forecast software because we can do a download from zero when we can do a forecast on Excel as quick and maybe more accurately than you're going to get on the software forecast. Now that might be unfair for any software houses who happen to listen to this. There is a benefit if you're not sure where to start with these forecasting things, then absolutely use the forecast software. They will guide you and help you for sure. I think it's important, particularly for an ongoing business that has some history, to try to work out when they have higher cash requirements than others. For example, round the VAT return quarter end is a great example where you've got that spike. There could also be a spike round about the time you have to pay for your corporation tax and or accounting fees. So I think it can be beneficial. And particularly if you're thinking about growing the business, you're going to have to invest a lot of money to get things moving. So you have to understand, if you're going to go to a bank, you're going to say, we need X amount of money
Yes.
for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Then you have to demonstrate to the bank that if they lend you the money, that at some point in the next 2 or 3 years, you're going to be able to repay that money.
Yeah.
So cash flow reporting for growing businesses that
Yeah.
need additional loan funding to move
Yes.
forward,
Yes.
that's where it becomes absolutely vital.
Yes. And everybody knows that the best time to ask the bank for money is when you don't need it.
Correct.
Because if you need it, you're screwed.
Well, the bank considers it too high a risk now.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I know you love books because last time we spoke, you had 100 books behind you. And there is a great book that you probably have read, but for people watching this, is a Profit First.
Yes.
I was talking to a business owner a while ago, and I got caught up by the VAT payment, And this book, one of the things it talks about is having different bank accounts. You have your tax account, so all the VAT which is not yours, you are just holding the VAT for a few months before you pay it to the HMRC. You put
Yes.
it into the VAT account. You have your profit account. If I'm supposed to make 10% or 20% from every payment I get from the customer, I put the 20% or whatever, my gross profit into the profit account or whatever it is. And I found it very interesting. It goes over too much on it because it talks about 7 bank accounts. I mean, I wouldn't dream of having 7 bank accounts, but I think you can take a few golden nuggets from that book. It's a great book, Profit First.
Absolutely. It's some really good ideas. And you don't have to physically have all those bank accounts to apply the principles in the book. You do have to set aside monies conceptually, if not actually, to
Yes.
make sure that you don't forget about something. I think the biggest one for me is, well, Michael Michalski or whatever the chap's name is.
Mikhailovich or whatever, yeah.
Yeah.
Polish.
He talks about taking money out for your own use and your own benefit, holiday funds and to live and all these things. I think that's possible when you have an established business. I think it's ridiculous for a business that's just getting started because you don't have enough money to pay yourself.
Yeah.
And if you do, it's just
Yeah.
enough to pay for the fuel to go to your next meeting.
Yes.
So I think again, it depends on where you are in business,
Yeah.
etc., etc.
I think it claims that a claim it makes is if you're in that situation, you put a pound, you put something, because many business owners end up running a business for years. They've never paid themselves a thing, a dime, and develops a mindset. So with this approach, and I agree with the approach, you start maybe with a pound or something, and then you grow it slowly, slowly,
You
slowly.
develop the habit.
Yeah,
Yeah, develop the habit.
yeah,
That's a good idea. No, I agree with it. I agreed with a lot of the principles in the book. It's a
yes.
good idea.
Yes, brilliant. Is there any particular book that you have read that had an impact in your life or help you in any way, or you think can help people watching this recording?
Yes, there's a book that I bought 4 copies of and I gave to my senior staff. It is the 177 success secrets of I think it's of the high achievers or of the great achievers. I'll see if I can remember the name of the book actually, because I'm not at my home office today.
I'll Google it. 177 secrets of hyper
Yes,
achievers, high
yes.
performers. Okay.
Have a little look. You can maybe put it in the notes. Now, what I love there are 2 things I love about this book. One, anybody who reads that book will never make an excuse in their life ever again.
I like
And
that.
that's the biggest problem with small businesses trying to grow. I can't do this, I can't do that, that's too difficult. And that book basically says that's nonsense, which is good. And the other great thing is a lot of people get into business aren't great readers. Now, reading is to the mind what food is to the body. Listening
Yes.
to podcasts is not the same. You use a different set of mental neural pathways, shall we say, to read than you do to listen. So it's important to read. But the beauty of that book is most chapters are 1 to 1.5 pages long.
Yes,
So
yes,
it's very succinct. You can get a message, you can read it 1 page in the morning, make a habit from that, just like profit first, make a habit of putting money away, make a
yes,
habit of reading 1 page or 1.5 pages a day,
yes,
and build that strength within you. And then you can contemplate that page for the rest of the day.
yes. I love books with short chapters. There is another great book that I'm sure you've read, the Eat That Frog.
I have
Time
Brian
Management by
Tracy,
Brian
yeah.
Tracy.
Yes.
Very thin book. It's got 100. It's got 21 chapters with 21 ideas, and every chapter is max 5 minutes, which for the busy executive, for the busy business owner, is a great read. And I
Yes.
always underline I use pen, and I'm a learner, I
Absolutely.
cannot read a book and it goes over my head. I take a pen, fold corners and markers and so on, and make it a
Absolutely.
workbook. Yeah, definitely.
That book, by the way, was written by a guy called Steve Siebold, the one I was telling about, the 170 Secrets of the High Achievers, or whatever it's called.
Okay, so the 177 mental toughness secrets of the
That's the one,
okay,
yes.
177 mental toughness secrets of the world class.
There you go.
Okay, very good. Okay, now we know.
Great
I'm
book.
gonna get that. I'm gonna get that. You got me.
Also, the 1 minute management series, the 1 minute salesman, the one
Yes,
minute
yes, yes.
manager, they're all fantastic books with strong messages. They're all
Who
very,
moves
very
my
good.
cheese, and the 1 minute executive manager, or whatever you call it. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, yes, these
Great
are all
books.
great books. And small books,
Yes,
thin,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
pure
yeah.
messages, very
Yes.
good.
Tell me what, so you made a very interesting comment, which is, podcast and books, and it's not the same. And a lot of people have moved from reading books to listening podcasts. Tell us more about, you know, the difference, if you like, in your own head.
So it's easy to fall asleep to a book, a podcast, or an audio book. It's easy to drift away and come back. I was taught many years ago by a trainer called Zig Ziglar, who sadly is no longer with us, an American self-development trainer who used to say, if you're going to listen to something, you have to listen to it a minimum of 9 times before it stops becoming entertainment, and then you actually know what the book's saying, or the podcast or the audio book is
Yes.
saying. You try reading when you're very tired. You will find it very difficult. And the advice I got from my mentor is if you're too tired to read, stand up and read. And when you hit the floor, you can wake up, finish the chapter, then go to bed.
Mm.
So reading is far more mentally involved, more active, and more tiring than listening. And that's why generally you get far more from reading than from listening.
Yeah. I've um I've got the habit of reading when I go to bed every night. I read every day, but always when I go to bed and I fall kind of, I just doze off, and but if I get 10, 12, 15 minutes every night, that's 10 minutes a day, is more than a week, a year, a full-time week. So it all compounds.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
And you talk about listening or reading it. You talk about
reading.
yeah,
Yeah,
reading so
yeah,
important. Can't underestimate them. In fact, there's a book by Jim Quick, who actually fell off a window ledge and smashed his head, broke his skull, and damaged his brain on the radiator in a school one day. And he discovered the power of reading, and he now teaches the power of reading. And
yeah.
he's the one who came up with the quote that reading is to the brain what food is to the body. And I
Yes,
agree with that. Very powerful.
yes.
Jim Quick.
Yeah, good, good. Now, some people, including myself, I mean, there are too many books to read and not enough time. So one trick I do myself, there is an app called
Mhm.
Short Form, and it gives a very good summary, long enough to get your teeth on it. Because sometimes it's too quick a summary and you don't get the value for it, but it gives you a good summary. And if I really like the summary, then I buy the book and I read it.
Mm.
Or sometimes an audible, because when I go for a run or whatever, and I listen to the book and say, this is too good just to listen to it. I need to take notes. It's a good signal. And I go and buy the book.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Good idea. Yeah, anything that gets you in that direction. And to be
Yes.
honest, if you read a summary, it's better than not reading.
Yes. definitely. Brilliant.
Good.
Great. Okay, so just to wrap up, do you have any, what would you recommend to your 18-year-old self?
Hmm. I would probably recommend the quote by a fellow called Larson. And I would encourage my 18-year-old self to read it until it became a mantra, until I saw it in my sleep and I saw it in my awakening time. It is 12 lines and it's a promise to myself. So anybody reading it, it'd be a promise to themselves. I promise myself to be so strong that nothing can disturb my peace of mind. I promise myself to be too large for worry, too noble for fear, too strong for anger, and too happy to permit the presence of trouble. Now, there are 12 of these quotes, all forming part of this overall mantra, if you want to call it that. Now, what happens is when you tell yourself these things regularly enough, it seeps down into your subconscious mind and changes you from the inside out. It changes you from someone with low self-esteem to someone with high self-esteem. It changes you from someone with no courage to someone with courage. It takes years, it takes months and years to change how you feel about yourself and life and others. And when you feel a successful person, it's inevitable you will become a successful person.
Mm.
If you lack the confidence, the courage, the self-esteem, becoming successful is extremely difficult. And
Yes,
the main purpose of setting up your own business as an entrepreneur is so that you can have a good life with good profits and good quality and good friends and good
yes,
time to yourself. You will not achieve that if you don't have the necessary characteristic traits.
yes,
So I'd probably tell myself, go read that every single day, every single night, and probably by today I'd be far more wealthy, far more happy, far more healthy than
mm,
I am currently.
yes. Those ideas come across in a number of books. For instance, what is it? Miracle, here we go. Miracle
Mhm.
Morning, a great book. It talks about the affirmations, which is what you are talking about. You
Absolutely.
need to visualize it first in your head. You cannot become
Mhm.
something you haven't thought about. Okay.
That's correct. Yeah.
Visual and then visualize, and then the affirmations, telling your subconscious through repetition, really, and until you
Yes.
believe it, if you like. No, very, very interesting. And then also the book by Think and Grow Rich by
Napoleon
Napoleon
Hill,
Hill.
Think and Grow Rich. Very
Yeah,
easy book to understand academically,
yes,
very an extremely difficult book to get emotionally. It is an emotional book, it's a spiritual book, it's not an academic book, and that makes it very difficult for
yeah,
people to read it and get it.
yes. Well, this book, it talks about the two ingredients, okay? And by rich is whatever is success, really. Is whatever you put that word there, okay? But you need to think it. Think and grow whatever you want to reach.
Yes,
And the two
yes,
ingredients, if you remember, is to have a extreme clarity of what you want. Because if you don't know what you want, it's a dead end. And the
correct.
second one is to have pig-headed determination, not a big head, pig-headed like a pig.
Yes.
Pig-headed, is because my pronunciation, pig-headed determination to achieve it. And those
Yeah.
are the two ingredients. So that's the summary of the book. But it's a great book. And the other one is it's a spiritual book. I can remember now. It's the law of attraction. The law of
Oh, the
attraction.
one by Rhonda Byrne, or which
I
particular one?
think
She did The
so.
Secret, The Law of Attraction. Esther Hicks, perhaps.
No,
The,
it's got a name. I can't remember the name, but it's about the law of attraction. I agree with the principle, but not how they talk about it. It's too not simplistic, but if you wish it, it comes to you. Well, I don't agree with that conclusion. But I agree with the principle, the end
yes,
outcome, but not how they get there.
it's interesting. You have to wish it with a huge amount of
The
emotion.
secret, the
The
secret.
secret, yes.
That's the book. Okay.
That is, it was published for sale. There's a lot more at the back of it. The
Yes.
word wish should be burning desire, which is the word used in Napoleon Hill's book. You have
Yes.
to have a burning desire so that the pain of not having it becomes stronger. The pain of having it becomes far stronger than the pain of not having it. And I think that's a really important point. But if you get your mental state right, then the thing you want wants you, and that makes it easier to get the thing you want. And it is, but that's when you start getting into the realms of the sixth sense and everything else that all of these books talk about.
Yes. Yeah. 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 If you
Very
want it
powerful.
badly enough, it comes to you. Well, you put the means to achieve it.
Yes,
I think you may talk about pain. Very, very interesting. People only change when it's painful enough.
correct.
If it's not painful
Absolutely.
enough, people are in their comfort zone, mediocrity, they put up with pain.
Yes,
But people who have achieved great things, a lot of it is there was a pain of some sort, that
absolutely.
it was a
Absolutely.
trigger to achieve,
Yes.
for
They
endurance.
want, they had a hunger akin
Yes.
to pain that wouldn't stop until they got to where they got to.
Yeah.
And in the process, they developed activity and habits that meant even when they got there, because they continued with those habits, they became
Yeah.
more and more and more successful. Alan
Yeah.
Sugar is a wonderful example of that.
Which one?
Alan Sugar.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And just skip on that line. What was it I was going to say? Who you become when you achieve things, who you become is more important than what you achieve. And you talked about developing habits and great behaviors. So it's so important who you become in achieving your goals. Yeah. Anyway, we could go on and on and on. I mean, I can see you've read a lot, and it's a pleasure speaking to you,
Thank you.
Brian. And I want to thank you, just to wrap up, for taking your time to be part of our Business Spotlight series. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I hope it helps the listeners
It
on
has
the
helped me
YouTube.
already. You've got a one.
Fantastic. Good, good, good.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you. All the best.
Okay, cheers.
Bye.